Good morning, Delaware. Welcome to Off the Shelf. It's great to have you with us. It's another Plague Friday, but we are here to tell you all about what's going on with the library. We are actually going to spend the second part of the show today talking about our plans to resume some limited service at the library very shortly, and to talk a little bit about how that will work and give you some ideas about what you'll be able to get from the library again, and kind of getting excited about being back with the public, even though in a very limited way. So anyway, good morning, Nicole.
Good morning, George.
How the heck are you?
We're good. We're good. Everybody's here. Everybody's, doing pretty well. The sun always makes us happier. And we're seeing a rainbow.
Well, that's good. That's very good. I'm in a particularly good mood today because last night I baked a lemon cake, and I'm going to frost it with lemon frosting today.
Yummy!
Because it is Joyce's birthday.
Oh,
and that's my traditional thing, is to make her a lemon cake, and then if the weather holds, I'll probably cook out on the grill for dinner tonight, and if not, I'll just broil some steaks in the house. So, this is kind of a tradition. Although, it would be nice to really be able to go out to a nice restaurant and all that sort of stuff. But I promise to make that up to her later. So, how are you doing, Gage?
Hey, not too bad, George. Grilling out sounds like a plan tonight. I don't know about you.
Yeah. I don't know. It does sound good, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
So anyway, well, let's see. It's just the two of us today because, like I said, in the second half of the show, we're going to talk about the resumption of service. But that doesn't mean we didn't read some stuff or listen to some stuff. So what you been listening to, Nicole, or reading?
Yeah, so I'm finishing up the Jonathan Van Ness book, and I didn't mention this last week, but Jonathan Van Ness's book, Over the Top, it does have some darker moments in it. You know him as like light, fluffy, and happy, but he had some he had a little bit of downward spirals before he found his joy, before he really found himself. So I want to give that like a little bit of a belated kind of trigger warning to that book. But what I've been looking at this week is, have you heard of the Edgar Awards, George?
Yes, the awards given for mystery writers.
That is right. So this year is the 74th anniversary of the Mystery Writers of America's gala, which celebrates the Edgar Awards. And of course, they normally would gather in a swanky hotel and maybe all wear their black tie and do a little whodunit while they give out the awards. But this year they did it virtually, and there are some really, really good titles on the list. So I thought I might take a minute to name some of the award winners.
That sounds great. I love the Edgar Awards. It's just one of my favorites.
It's just so much fun. It's so niche, and it really gives people who love the genre of mystery and crime a lot of good things to put on their to-read list. So this year, the winner for the best novel went to The Stranger Diaries, which is by Ellie Griffiths. And The Stranger Diaries is a story about a woman who is a high school teacher. She specializes in the Gothic writer R.M. Holland, and she teaches a course on him. But one of her colleagues is found dead with an iconic line from one of Holland's stories left by her body. And so, of course, Claire is horrified to see her life collide with her favorite literature. And the police, of course, suspect that it's someone that she knows, and she doesn't know who to trust. And so, since she doesn't know who to trust, she retreats back into her diary. And as she looks back into her diary, she sees handwriting in it that does not belong to her. Ooh. And so that begins the story of The Stranger Diaries by Ellie Griffiths. So that was the winner of the novel. Then they give a special category to the best first novel by an American author. And that winner went to Miracle Creek by Angie Kim. Angie Kim wrote a story that is a little bit about family secrets, lies, of course. It's going to be one that people who like Celeste Ng or people who like Leanne Moriarty will enjoy. Definitely recommended by both of them. Also, if you like Erin Morgenstern, she recommends this book. So the base of this story, which again is called Miracle Creek by Angie Kim, is that there's a Oh, I lost my place. Where did it go? Will you keep their secrets? Okay. There's a special treatment center, and it has people who have needs everything from infertility to autism. And in this special treatment center, they're using a hyperbaric chamber to cure all of these special needs.
Wow.
And then the chamber explodes and two people die. And it becomes very obvious that the explosion wasn't an accident. So who done it, right? You start to learn that there are some people who might not have wanted this treatment center to exist, so they're protesting. Could it have been the protesters? Maybe the owners wanted to cash in on a big insurance payout. Maybe it was just a careless mother of a patient. And so one of the fun things about this particular novel is your allegiances are going to shift every single chapter that you read and every single perspective that you hear from. So that's a fun one.
That's really clever to do that too, to shift the perspective like that, because when you're writing a mystery, you always have that, you frequently have the omniscient narrator who's supposed to know everything that's going on. But if you keep shifting points of view, you get different ways of looking at the same crime.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think I was both a good and a terrible journalist whenever I was in my journalism days, is because I really liked hearing everyone's stories and I really liked believing all sides. And I think that can be a blessing and a curse.
I think so.
At the
Yes,
same
especially
time.
for a journalist, yes.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to skip down to one that I think, George, you would particularly enjoy. So this is my recommendation for you, George, and also for people who are listening to the show who love your recommendations. The winner of Best Critical or Biographical Novel was Hitchcock and the Censors by John Bilheimer.
Oh, that sounds terrific.
Yes, this one is, it might be difficult to find this one. So I can attest that I have not looked to see where you can find all of these, but Hitchcock and the Censors by John Bilheimer is about, it's true, of course, but it talks about how throughout his entire career, Hitchcock had to deal with a huge amount of censorship of his work. He had to remove the slightest suggestion of sexual innuendo, of undue violence, of toilet humor, even religious disrespect, indecency, even if it was imagined indecency, he had to remove it from his work. So from 1934 to 1968, the Motion Picture Production Code Office, they controlled all of the content and the final cut on all the films. And during their review of most of Hitchcock's films, they demanded an average of 22 changes per movie. Per movie. I mean, everything from the ending of Rebecca. They totally absolved Cary Grant of his guilt in Suspicion. So he, I guess, was going to go on guilty in that movie. Otherwise, they edited Cole Porter's lyrics of a song in Stage Fright.
Wow.
They decided which shades should be drawn in Rear Window, and they shortened the shower scene in Psycho. So in this book, the author, he goes through and he traces kind of the forces that led to the production code, describes Hitchcock's interactions with them, and then he also highlights the director's theories of suspense as well as Hitchcock's magician-like touch when negotiating with the code officials. So it sounds like even though he walked away with an average of 22 cuts in his movie, there could have been more.
Yeah, he got away with a lot. Right? He would throw stuff into the movies that he knew was going to get cut, right, so that he could negotiate for the things he wanted to keep.
Right,
so
right, yeah, exactly.
he knew how to play the system.
If anyone likes any of these titles, you'll be able to find them. We posted the list of the full winners on our Facebook page this week, so you'll be able to go back through our posts and see all of the winners and the other nominees in the categories.
Very cool. Well, thank you. And that's the Edgar Awards. There's a couple of other awards for mysteries, but Edgar is that's the top of the line. That's like the Oscars. So anyway, the book I'm reading this week is called Mighty Fitz, The Sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald, and it was written by an author named Michael Schumacher. This is not a new book. I picked it up at one of the Friends book sales a while back. But if that name sounds familiar to you, you might remember the song by Gordon Lightfoot, The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, which he wrote upon hearing about this disaster. This was the worst shipwreck, or probably the most famous shipwreck that ever happened in American waters, because it happened in Lake Superior. And it was one of the biggest of the ore boats that carried ore from the mines up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and Wisconsin, and carried it down to the steel factories and the auto plants down in the Detroit area. And it set out probably for its last voyage of the year on November 8th, 1975. And the next day ran into terrible weather, which it had done many, many times in the past. But this time it sunk without a trace. There was no SOS. There was no warning. The captain had been talking back and forth with the captain of another freighter that was kind of running a parallel course to his. And his last message to the other captain was that everything was okay. And then all of a sudden it just disappeared from radar. And for years, there was controversy over what had actually caused the Edmund Fitzgerald to go down. And there was a Coast Guard report that had been done fairly quickly after the disaster that blamed bad loading of the iron ore into the holds and not securing the hatches properly. And that when it got swamped with water, they filled up and they capsized the boat and it went down. Further explorations really brought that into doubt. There was a lot of controversy. And in fact, when Gordon Lightfoot wrote the song, it was still widely suspected that there had been a human error. But when they did about 25 years after the boat sunk, there was a made-for-TV documentary, a series called Dive Detectives, where they went down to the Edmund Fitzgerald and discovered that probably what had happened was that the ship had been swamped by a 50-foot wave.
Oh.
And that nothing could have kept it afloat. Now, it sank in 550 feet of water, but this was a ship that was over 700 feet long. So if it had gone straight down like a pencil, 200 feet of it would have still been above the water. That's how big this ship was. This ship was taller than the Huntington building downtown. Okay?
So it just had to go down flat.
It went down flat. Well, it went down in two pieces, but it did go down flat. The torque of the water actually tore it in half. So it was a terrible tragedy. I mean, 29 people lost their lives. And eventually it was actually declared a graveyard site. And so now there's no more exploration of that site allowed. Now, whether people are doing it illegally and going in and looking, they're not supposed to be, because it's now considered a maritime graveyard. And Gordon Lightfoot, like I said, changed the lyrics of the song to make it seem less like it was a human error, because originally the lyric went, when summertime came, the old cook came on deck saying, fellas, it's too rough to feed ya. At 7 p.m., a main hatchway caved in. He said, fellas, it's been good to know ya. He changed that at 7 p.m., a main hatchway caved in to at 7 p.m., it grew dark. It was then. He said, fellas, it's been good to know you. Okay. So, yeah, so he took that very seriously. I mean, it was for him, it helped turn his career around. It gave him a new hit and put him back on the charts. But he has always been very respectful of what happened there, too. So
I like that second lyric a little bit better. It just sounds a little bit more ominous.
It's and more human, and really more human. So again, this is a pretty well written book. It's very, very thorough, and I think if you're at all, I grew up about a mile from where the eastern end of Lake Erie empties into the Niagara River. I could actually walk there from home, and so I grew up with the Great Lakes in my veins. So this book was particularly good for me. It's not a new book. It won the 2006 Michigan Notable Books list and an Outstanding Achievement Award from the Wisconsin Library Association. So it's about 15 years old, but it reads really well, and it's not a particularly long book. But if you're interested in the Edmund Fitzgerald, it's a really a good read. Again, it's called Mighty Fitz: The Sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald by Michael Schumacher. So we will be back after this break with some information about how we are going to start resuming service for you at the library. So stay tuned. Okay. Welcome back to Off the Shelf. Thanks to the Friends of the Library for sponsoring our show. You know, I had a meeting with the Friends of the Library Executive Committee just last night. They are continuing to work, trying to plan, figuring out what they can do while we're during this hiatus period. But, you know, they are so dedicated, and we really do appreciate everything they do for us. So thank you, guys. Thank you, Executive Committee. And we'll be getting through this. Don't worry. We will rise again. So, speaking of rising again, we are planning now to start resuming library service on a limited basis on the day after Memorial Day. That's Tuesday, May 26th. And what we're going to do is we are going to start with curbside service. In other words, we will bring materials out to you or pass them through the drive-thru at Orange rather than having you come into the building. So what we've done is we've laid in a supply of masks and gloves and disinfectants and wipes and all that sort of stuff. We are also doing training for the work teams, and we will have small work teams that work on this process in the libraries during the day. And what we have is teams that won't cross lines, so that if somebody gets quarantined, the whole team gets quarantined, but not the whole library staff. So if it's a group of 5 or 6 people and they have to stay home for 14 days, we don't lose everybody in the library. So we're working on that. And we have to train people in these new systems and how we're going to do this to make sure they know how to keep themselves safe and how to keep the patrons safe. This is a lot different than the way we usually handle materials. But here's what will happen. At Delaware, what you can do, we're going to start by getting rid of all of the holds and reserves that we've had on the shelf since March 15th that people asked for before. And what you'll do is you will drive up to the library after you've gotten your notice that your holds are ready. You drive up to the library and you'll call us. You'll call us on a cell phone. You call our cell phone number in the library. Tell us you're here, and we will bring the books out to the car. You pop the trunk on your car. We'll put the books in your trunk, and you'll be on your way. If you can't, easy peasy. If you cannot, if you have a pickup truck, or if you have a car that doesn't have a trunk that has a hatch or something of that nature, we will set the books down by the back bumper of your car, and you can pick them up after we've gone back in the building. Take them away with you. What we want to do is minimize the physical contact between the staff and the users. When you come through Orange, of course, they have the drive-through window, so you'll pick the books up there pretty much the way you always do, although they may have a way of handing out to you, so there's no handling directly like that to you. We're going to open Orange and Delaware on the 26th. We will follow up, work through these things, make sure everything works properly. And then the following week on June 1st, we'll start doing curbside service at the Powell Branch Library. And then on the 3rd of June, we'll start at the Ostrander Library. We would have started at the first at Ostrander, but they're having some physical work done at the library, and the driveway won't be available. So that's why we're delaying that just a little. So anyway, this is what we're going to have available. Now, you'll be able to call in and request materials after a couple of days after we've gotten started, making sure we got the kinks out. You can call in, ask for us to pull things for you. You can look at what we have online and go in there and put holds on materials the same way you always did from home before. Mm-hmm. We will not have the service from the Central Library Consortium for a couple more weeks. So it'll only be materials that are available in the library proper. We won't be able to bring things to you from, say, Worthington or Columbus or Alexandria or anywhere like that. So anyway.
That's a really good point. I mean, I think if somebody doesn't know how to search our catalog, maybe they were on our website, DelawareLibrary.org, they went to search our catalog and they were looking for, let's say a Harry Potter book or something like that. How would they know to get a copy of Harry Potter requested that's from one of the Delaware Library branches?
The Delaware Library branch's materials show up first, so that's the easiest way. Before you'll notice that if you see that it's a title less popular than Harry Potter, and something that's more that maybe only Columbus has, you can put a hold on it. But the fact is, you won't get it until transportation starts up again. So it'll be several weeks. If it's something you need immediately, you may want to check into what Columbus is doing with their curbside service, which is also starting up pretty shortly. Mm-hmm. But what we'll be doing is, if you do put a hold or reserve on now, what we'll do is we'll send you the same sort of notice, either email or text or a phone call like you have in your system, and we'll tell you when the materials are going to be available, and you can find out when we're open. We have not yet set the actual operating hours for this. We'll talk about that next week. What we have to do is figure out how many teams we have. We have to be careful that we're not putting people who are vulnerable because they've either got a family member who is particularly susceptible to COVID or because they have childcare issues or things like that. We're trying to take all of that into account as we schedule. So we don't have the exact times we're going to be open yet, but we will be announcing that very shortly. One of the things that we also will be doing then is taking materials back in. And you might wonder how we're going to take care of those. And what we're doing is we are quarantining materials as they come back. So you'll throw things into the book return the same way you always did. We will take the bins out of the book return. We will not touch the materials then for 72 to 96 hours. That is the best information that we have from the Centers for Disease Control, from the Department of Health, that's how quickly the virus dissipates on paper, plastic, and cardboard. And those are the big three for us in libraries, right? The plastic book jackets, the plastic on the CDs, the paper in the books. That way we can be sure that virus has dissipated. Then the staff will check the books back in, with the DVDs back in, put them back in the system. Either we'll reshelve them, or if there's a hold on them, we'll put them on the hold and we start the whole process over again. The whole idea is that we want to make sure that we are doing this the safest way we can for both the staff and for the users. And so we are actually waiting research that I think I mentioned earlier, and I know we put up on our Facebook page that the Battelle Institute is doing on contract with the Institute for Museum and Library Services, OCLC, and the National Archive. We were hoping we were going to get results on that really quickly, but it looks like we're not going to get any results on that until July. But we're not expecting any huge new revelations from that. So we'll use the best science that we've got right now to make sure that we are being as safe as we humanly can with this. Now, we'll also resume telephone and online reference and homework help service shortly after we start taking reserves and holds. And we've actually been doing some of that reference service on the chat service that we have now on our website that Nicole actually got us going on right after the pandemic started. So we appreciate that. Now, the next question then, of course, is when will you actually physically open the buildings? And I don't have an answer for that.
We don't know.
No, we are retrofitting a lot of things in the building right now. We are moving materials around. We are bringing the Maker Annex back into the Delaware Library, and this is taking some time. We also have to make sure that we have, again, following the best advice that we can get, what we can do with how many people we can allow in the building at a time. We are really going to strongly require masks. We are doing all the things with the staff with masks and gloves, disinfectants and all that, and trying to keep the exposure as limited as possible. But we really don't have a specific date that we're going to open. Again, quite frankly, I'm going to look and see what happens with retail and with restaurants and bars and see if there's a spike 2 or 3 weeks after they've reopened.
Right, because the last thing that we want to have happen is for us to say, yeah, we're sure we've got our doors open and here's what we're planning, and then there's a giant spike and then we close all over again. So I think if we kind of, take our curve with the whole rest of the economy, then we're doing the right thing and we're helping everybody else to stay safe. And it's not to say, I know people are talking to me, my neighbors are chomping at the bit to get back into the library or at least to get books. And I've even had neighbors mention to me, oh yeah, sure, just give me whatever books you can and I'll quarantine them in my garage for a week before I touch them. I don't care. Just get me new books, And whatever you want to do with the books whenever they come into your house is up to you. We will have done everything.
Always has been. Right.
Yes. Right. Exactly.
You want to read the new bestseller
that we can.
You want to read the new bestseller while you're eating a plate of spaghetti, that's your business,
it happens. We have no control.
We have none. Your dog hasn't seen a new book in a while, may decide to chomp down on it. These things happen. But we really do want to make sure that it's as safe as possible for everybody. And so we're working with the other libraries in Central Ohio and around the state to make sure that we're all trying to be as conscientious as possible about this. You may see some that come in sooner, some that come in later. It is still a local decision by our local board, acting on the advice that we provide as managers of the library and as staff of the library. We really appreciate your understanding. I know this has been a difficult time. It's been difficult for us too, because we I hate to say this out loud, but we really miss you guys.
Just a little bit.
Just a little, yeah. Good grief! It was so funny. I had a medical procedure last week, and the nurse before my procedure and the nurse after are both Delaware County Library users, and both wanted to know when we were going to reopen because they wanted materials.
Aww.
So at least I knew they were going to take good care of me, so that wouldn't delay the reopening. So anyway, so thank you for your patience, folks. We really do appreciate it. Thanks to the Friends of the Library for their resilience through this. I can't say enough good things about the staff. They have been working diligently to try to figure out how to do this and to keep everybody and everyone safe. So we'll have more to come next Friday with some specific times when the curbside service will be available. Until then, thank you so much. Thank you, Nicole.
Always a pleasure. Yes,
and,
absolutely.
Gage, thank you. Always pleasure working with you. And
absolutely.
Again, thanks to the Friends for your support, and we will see you online, and pretty soon we'll see you in the parking lot. Take care.